is being recorded.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to the November 19, 2020 board meeting. My name is Greg Lippy, president of the board. Before we convene, I advise all individuals observing or participating in the meeting that the meeting is being conducted consistent with the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. As I facilitate the meeting, I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I have advised staff to allot 2 minutes to each individual providing comments. This approach is necessary to facilitate the meeting. I appreciate everyone's understanding and patience as we continue to navigate this meeting format. Before we get started, I'll ask staff moderating the meeting to provide general instructions. Moderator, please go ahead.
Good morning, this is the moderator. Today we will be using the question and answer feature in WebEx for processing of public comments. When we get to the point where the president requests public comment, I will open the Q&A panel. When we open that panel, we will display instructions on the screen that will assist you in submitting your request for public comment. We will ask you to click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. You will type into the field, I would like to make a comment, or I would like to make a public comment, and you will submit that to all panelists. We will be taking requests for comment in the order that they are received. We do ask that you remain professional with no profanity and no obscenities. And with that, I will turn the floor back over to the president.
Thank you. I will now take a roll call to establish a quorum. Members, as I call your name, please remember to open your line before speaking. I will start with Ryan Brooks.
Present.
Thank you. Debbie Veal.
Present.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler. Cheryl, if you're here, please unmute.
She's not yet with us, President.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sung Oh.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Here.
Thank you. Shirley Kim.
Member Kim is also not with us at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Jason Weiss.
Here.
Thank you. Maria Serpa.
Here.
Thank you. Jig Patel.
Good morning.
Thank you. Albert Wong.
Here.
Thank you. A quorum has been established. The board will now entertain any public comments for items not on the agenda. To facilitate this portion of the meeting, as I previously announced, staff will open up the phone line for individuals to provide the opportunity for public comment. You're not required to identify yourself, but you may do so. As we open the lines, I remind everyone that the board cannot take action on these items except to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Members, following review of the public comment for the agenda item, I will ask you to comment on what, if any, items should be placed on a future agenda. Okay, moderator, please open the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for submission of requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment in the ask field and submit that to all panelists. We will provide just a moment for submission of requests.
Doesn't look like we have any.
Seeing none, we will close the Q&A panel at your direction.
Yes, thank you. Okay, having none. Members, the next item on the agenda is discussion and consideration of board policy regarding expansion of duties of a pharmacy technician to allow for administration of vaccines. As you recall, during our meeting last month, the board approved a policy statement conveying support of the expansion of pharmacy technician duties to include administration of the influenza vaccination or influenza vaccine. The adopted policy statement is included in the meeting materials. Members, as well as some public comments, suggested that it may be appropriate to allow pharmacy technicians to also administer other vaccines. As you are aware, because of limitations on the agenda, we were precluded from discussing the larger issue. Given the timing of the board's supplemental report to the legislature, I placed this item on the agenda to provide us with the opportunity to have the larger discussion if you believe such discussion is appropriate. During the October meeting, Licensing Chair Veal walked the board through all the policy questions considered when developing its original recommendation to the board. While I do not believe we need to go over each question again, it is important to start with the fundamental question. Do we believe it is in the best interest of California consumers for pharmacy technicians to administer vaccinations if delegated by a supervising pharmacist? Chair Veal advised us that Rhode Island appears to allow a pharmacy technician to be involved in the administration of adult immunizations in accordance with training requirements promulgated by the Department of Health. Further, Nevada, in response to COVID-19, amended authority to authorize a pharmacy technician with appropriate training to administer immunizations under the direct supervision of a pharmacist. Members, I would now like to hear from you. If as part of our comments you believe an expansion of the board's current policy is appropriate, I will entertain a motion as part of your comments. Thank you. I think I'm going to call you by name so I can get your comments. I'll start with Maria Serpa.
Thank you, Mr. President. I speak in support of the agenda item and would like to move forward with the policy statement. I believe that this is the process is under the significant oversight of a pharmacist, and having pharmacy technicians providing vaccinations would be in the best interest of public health and within the abilities of their training, including the training statements that were in the policy statement. Once again, this would be under the direct supervision of a pharmacist, and similar to what technicians do now in preparing very complicated medications under the direct supervision of a pharmacist, chemotherapy, nutritional products, and other very complicated processes, which are not as complicated as providing a vaccine. So I'd like to move that the policy statement be accepted. Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
This is Debbie. I just have one question. The policy statement is only around influenza, and it sounded like you were saying all vaccines. Can you just clarify?
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, I guess I went a little bit further because of my opinion is pretty strong on this, but the policy statement is just for influenza vaccines. Thank you, Debbie, for the clarification.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Debbie.
Greg, can you hear me?
Right, if she
Wait,
wants.
son?
Greg?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Cheryl?
Yeah, I just wanted, I'm sorry.
Hold on, wait.
I'm sorry.
Follow up on my question, please.
No, excuse me. I just wanted to make sure you guys could hear me because I just came on. I wasn't sure if I was connected. Sorry about that.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. Okay, Debbie, come back.
Maria, I think, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard you say that we could expand the, in this meeting, if we wanted to, we could expand the policy statement beyond influenza. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So Maria, I guess, is that your intent, is to expand it beyond influenza, or just to stick with influenza as in the meeting material?
My personal opinion, in light of what technicians' abilities are, in that, as long as it's under the direct supervision of a pharmacist and the immunization guidelines are approved via the materials that we've had, that it include all vaccines vaccinations that a pharmacist is able to provide, a technician should be able to provide also with their oversight. So that was my my primary intent. But if that's going to cause confusion and potentially not have influenza vaccine being offered, I am concerned about that. But my original motion was for all vaccines that are authorized.
And I would second that, Greg.
Okay,
And this is Debbie, by the way.
I know. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to allow technicians under the direct supervision of a pharmacist to provide all vaccinations that currently can be provided by a pharmacist. Yeah, have I stated that properly, Maria?
Yes, and including the other items that are in the policy statement about training and the such. Thanks.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right.
This is
So I've heard,
Eileen. Just to clarify, are we talking about vaccines included on the ACIP schedule, or are we talking about other vaccines that are authorized or approved by the FDA? Because in the meeting materials, it's ACIP.
So I think it was including all vaccines that are authorized as being given by a pharmacist within California. So that would be the ACIP ones, but there may be others in the future that may not be on that list that pharmacists are authorized for. So if the licensing committee and Debbie Veal are approving of that motion, that was my original motion, would be all vaccines that pharmacists are authorized to administer.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
what
thank
the
you.
licensing committee did is FDA approved, because sometimes there's a little bit of a gap in time between FDA and getting to ACIP. So we're leaning towards FDA approved. So
Yeah, and then that would fit under what a pharmacist is authorized to do, and then a technician could.
yeah, right. I think Maria's motion covers it all. So
Okay, Greg, can we have an opinion about this?
absolutely, I'm calling everybody for their opinion. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl, why don't you give us your opinion?
Okay, I'm thinking that this is moving way too fast. As a matter of fact, I thought this meeting was supposed to be about discussing the sunset review. And I noticed on 60 that that the COVID, that it moved from us, this discussion being about sunset committee and the sunset report, and now we're talking about having text after we went through all of this discussion about influenza and the vaccines and licensing. I don't understand how we can jump from talking about influenza to now talking about text doing all these vaccines. I don't understand why this cannot go like we had already discussed to licensing committee, and we discussed this. I just feel like it's too vague. It's way too much. Text. I mean, when I talked to Text went to school. I mean, they studied to come work in the pharmacy, not to be doing work that has to do with what nurses do. This is a whole lot put on Text all at one time without us taking this to licensing. Why is it here now, this soon?
Okay, thank you. Maybe we can get some answers. Next would be Albert Wong. Can we hear from you?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Maria said, and I think after hearing from Cheryl, we probably want to talk a little further. But I do support the tech who's willing, instead of mandatory, the one who willing to do so, allow them to do so, just the same as a pharmacist. I don't want it to be mandatory. They have to do it because it's otherwise will compromise the service of the regular duty of the pharmacist. Because as I hear in the past, especially from Cheryl, that a lot of pharmacy have a single pharmacist and with one tag or no tag, and sometimes they have to use the cashier from the front to help out, to ring up prescription or whatever to help out. So I mean, with those kind of situation, if you make a pharmacist to do the testing at the same time, you have to put in all the equipment on and do a single test or many tests. At the meantime, who's performing the regular duty of a pharmacist while they're doing that? So I agree that for the pharmacy who's want to do those testing, they should provide the manpower, sufficient manpower to do so, instead, require the pharmacist or the technician to do it if they are not willing to do so. So they should hire the people who's willing to do the job, and that's my opinion.
Thank you. Okay. How about Ryan Brooks?
Thanks, Mr. President. I think this is so critical and important. I'm not seeing any big policy issues or big, concerns to the public. And so I'd like to move this forward as is today.
Thank you. Okay, Jason Weiss.
I still have concerns about authorizing the full suite of vaccines, not going beyond flu and COVID-19. So I think I would like to hear more discussion, especially on what the techs think of having this option, what is their experience, and then also to reiterate their ability to only do this willingly. I think that is also important. So if I could hear more thoughts from other board members, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next would be Ricardo Sanchez.
I'm in support of Maria Serpa's opinion.
Okay. Sung Oh.
Hi, Greg. Hi, everybody. So I do feel very strongly about this policy statement. First of all, I think I am actually the only one who works in a community pharmacy setting that actually would be directly affected by this. And decisions that we make, we have to realize are going to affect a lot of people. And when we allow somebody to do something, we have to look at all the consequences of what it may come along. I understand the strong support for this from other board members for the public protection due to the pandemic, but are we really doing what is necessary to provide the public protection? This actually could not actually help the people. It could actually harm people. We are extrapolating what has been done by pharmacy 5 states into the states in the country. And we are jumping, I think, way too fast on this, as I am agreeing with Cheryl. In it, tell you from what a real community pharmacist is saying, first of all, they're afraid to speak up about this because they're already afraid of retaliation. And we don't, we are always only hearing from our, corporate colleagues, which it's totally fine, but we live in a pharmacy industry right now that a regular pharmacist are so afraid because of the job market, the way it is, are so afraid of just speaking up. So as technicians, and we are jumping through this to make them do this. And when we allow someone to do it, it should not be making someone doing it. And so I am deeply concerned. We need to at least add a statement to our policy statement protecting pharmacists from being forced to supervise. If a pharmacist feels forced to do it, there has to be a protection, some sort of protection. I don't know if it's rebuttally presumed as retaliation if they're forced to do it of some sort. There has to be a way that a technician and pharmacist who already are so spread thin and who hear from vast majority of pharmacists and technicians that they cannot even imagine adding another duty to what they're doing is to either supervise a technician or a technician actually doing this duty. So from a community pharmacy standpoint, we need to take a real good look at this and figure out, is this really going to help the public? Are we really going to make pharmacists and pharmacy technicians who are already extremely overworked and understaffed to add more for their work? And I can tell you that they're not going to be protected if they don't feel comfortable doing this. They are going to be forced into doing it. As I said, if we are allowing someone to do something, we have to look at the consequences of what that may bring upon that person. And so I really urge all of us, please reconsider this. We need to take a better look at this. We need to understand the market of what's going on in our pharmacy industry, especially in the community pharmacy. This is going to impact community pharmacy. And I urge you to please listen to what's going on. And I think that this needs to really get either better look at the licensing committee about the retaliatory protections, or we need to add a very strong statement protecting the pharmacists and technicians from forced into doing this.
President Lippy, this is Ryan Brooks. Can I ask a follow-up question as a non-pharmacist?
Sure.
So thanks for the comments. I'm trying to understand is your point is this is not a public safety issue, meaning the public's not going to get harmed by it. The issue is a workload issue and an indemnification issue on of the farm technician. Is that your point? And I'm also hearing that you would like to have some language that protects. Let me finish. And it sounds like you would also like to have some language that would give the farm tech the providing vaccine. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm a non-pharmacist. That's the point while I'm answering the question.
So first of all, I'll just address your first question, Ryan. I believe directly public health's interest is related to how and what pharmacists and technicians are allowed to do. We would be foolish to think if we add more and more stuff for them to do, and somehow that's not going to jeopardize pharmacists to actually perform their duties. We are spreading them so thin, we are not really adequately giving them resources to do their job. And that is directly related to public safety. That's my point. And secondly, yes, I think that there has to be some sort of protection. There has to be some statement saying that this is not forcing a pharmacist to do this.
Okay.
So if there was a cap on the number, would that be okay? I'm just trying to, because I mean, there's all kinds of issues that farm technicians do on a daily basis. If you could cap the number, would that make you feel comfortable?
What do you mean capping the number of shots they can give in a day?
Sure, because what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're afraid or your concern is that farm techs will be overwhelmed. They're too busy as it is today, and adding another duty would create a public harm. And so maybe we cap the number of, for independent pharmacies, the number of shots they can give a day. Would that help? I'm just trying to find a solution. And just because the public safety and health is paramount, and I'm not hearing a big concern from you.
Well, I am definitely concerned about public safety. That's why I'm bringing this up. I am deeply concerned about public health. I can tell you from my practice setting that I am always concerned about my fellow pharmacists and myself providing these services because there are many times where we are really inadequately given resources to do our job. And so capping it, I'm not really sure that's going to help. I think that this needs to be more about looked at as if they feel uncomfortable, if they feel like they're not given enough resources. Same thing with the pharmacists in charge. Are we really, they have to be given adequate authority to say, no, I don't feel comfortable because we are way overworked, overloaded our duties. I don't feel safe that we can do this in safe situation. I am totally okay if we're going to say pharmacy technicians and a pharmacist, just all they do is just vaccinate. That would be a beautiful idea. But in a community pharmacy setting, the way that things are, this would be really dangerous to the public if this is pushed forward.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Somehow, just exactly what I said. Exactly what I want to say. I don't want this to make it mandatory and retaliatory.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think what happens, as Sung would say or said, once it's allowed, then whoever happens to be running the operation can make it difficult for those working there if they don't agree to do it. So it's something to think about. Anyway, I'd like to hear from Jig.
Good morning. Thank you, President Lippi. Absolutely, our consumer is our focus, and to protect them is our job as the board. In this time, I think every person living in California is going to benefit significantly if local pharmacies, which Health and Human Services have authorized to provide this vaccine for COVID-19 that's going to come out, given this big responsibility to mass immunize. To provide this safely, as a board, we are talking right now to train these licensed individuals that are providing a lot of skilled services currently to further enable them to provide this service to consumers. We are training them. We are going to not just say, go ahead and give shots. There's going to be 6 hours of training like we discussed in our board meeting last time. And I think we had very, very good conversation last time around this. And this is going to enable them to help every single Californians out there that's going to reach out to their nearest pharmacy to get their COVID-19 vaccine. Now, let's take it out of the picture of the pandemic. This is going to be great help. But in regular routine, if we are concerned today that it's going to hurt consumers, I don't agree with that. I don't think we are going to hurt consumers in any way. We are empowering these professionals that the board licenses to further, improve their professional skills and impart that to consumers out there. Obviously, you already discussed, President Lippi, that so many states are providing this. I have personally, in my day job, seen that in Nevada. I have 7 technicians that never gave vaccines 3 months ago. They got trained 8 weeks ago, and 6 of them are providing vaccines every day. They feel really good about their career. They feel good that they could help the pharmacist when there is a consultation or there is a doctor's call or something significant they need to intervene in, and they can, once the pharmacist recommended, okay, go ahead and give this shot to this person. They take care of everything. They feel good about it. They feel empowered. One of the things that I did was I oversee 29 retail pharmacies and I have 57 technicians work for me. I called each and every one of them, spoke to them personally, and I told them at will, if everything were to work out, would you be wanting to enroll in training to provide immunizations and administer vaccines to our patients? And 38 out of 57 agreed and signed up and said, okay, if this is approved, I would want to get trained. So there is significant enthusiasm among technicians today. And at least 7 of them asked me about the advanced pharmacy technician certification, which the board is already considering, and this is the first step towards that. So all in all, I think we are going to empower our licensed individuals working in retail and hospital settings and every other setting out there to be able to go out and do more. So this is the step in right direction, and I think we are moving at the right pace, and this is the second time we are discussing this, and it would be a good decision. Thank you.
Greg,
you.
I'd like to, I like to comment that I understand what I understand what Jig is saying about the text and the text that he come in contact with, but I can tell you that more text than what he just announced, I have talked to, and they have a major problem with this. So at the end of the day, our mandate is public protection. Our mandate also, and it goes to, we have always, whenever it was a situation like this, we discussed that this was supposed to go to licensing. We're supposed to have more discussion. We talked only about the influenza vaccine, and I don't understand why, again, this cannot be discussed in licensing like we had original, because now we're talking about more than influenza. And it's like we're gonna, it's like we're just shooting through this and going straight to this is something that can be done without even going through the process. Again, like Song said, I mean, our pharmacists is overwhelmed since SB 493. We're getting ready with PrEP and PEP, and pharmacists are getting used to the doing the vaccines, and now we're taking this the text. I'm sorry, the text I've talked to do not like this and think that we should take this to licensing and discuss it more.
Okay, here's what, we're gonna hear public comment.
Wait, hey, Greg, I haven't been able to give my thoughts.
Okay.
I haven't either.
Okay. Who's the haven't either?
Shirley.
Oh, I didn't know Shirley was here yet.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, I know when I called roll, you weren't here yet. Okay. Okay, well, let's go ahead with Debbie and then with Shirley. Debbie, go ahead.
Thank you. I do want to address what Cheryl is saying about, I hear the angst in your voice, Cheryl, about this, moving forward and not going back to licensing. And so I think I want to clarify what's happening here, and Greg and Ann can kind of validate. Right now, we're talking about the policy statement, and so this enables us to put a policy statement out there, so during COVID, we can get potentially a waiver put in place so that the technicians right now can do influenza, and I think really the other vaccine we're really focused on here is the COVID one, especially now since it sounds like it's going to be coming out soon. What is going back to our licensing committee, Cheryl, for you and I and Song and Albert to discuss, Jason also to discuss, is to make it a statutory permanent change. So I just want to make sure you understand, because you're exactly right. At the last meeting, we did vote to have a statutory change to be discussed in licensing. But this is about just a policy statement so that we can put a waiver in place. I also, although I haven't, talked specifically to large number of techs like Jig and Cheryl have, I've talked to a few, and I've also, I think one of the stakeholders brought up a technician survey that has been done in the past with technicians and enhancing their job duties with things like being able to administer the vaccine if properly trained. And what I've heard, I haven't had any technicians, but I understand that maybe it's just the people I'm interacting with and talking to, say that they don't want to do it. They actually they actually think it is an enhancement of their job. They actually like it. But, I believe that there probably are some technicians out there who, don't want to do it. And I think it's just, the decision is at the discretion of the pharmacist. So, under the pharmacist's supervision and discretion, technicians would do this. And, I hear what both Song and Cheryl are saying that, if there's some technicians who don't want to do it, that be an option. And I think, with all the other tasks that we have, and I remember when immunizations first started, there's pharmacists who didn't want to do those either. And now most of them, I think, enjoy doing it because it's the patient contact that we all went to school for. I hear that, that there is sometimes it's busy in the pharmacy. So I hear what you're saying, Song. And so sometimes it is a challenge, but I think that the answer is not to, kill an idea, to an opportunity to, help the public. I agree with Jig that this does help public safety. And I think, we need to have, the individuals, the pharmacists absolutely have the right to say no to a tech or to say, no, I'm not going to do it. The board can't protect the pharmacist from their employer. I think that has to be a discussion between the pharmacist, the employer, and the employer practices. And it seems like it comes up that companies, force and, whether it be an independent with a, one or two pharmacists working for them or a chain, forcing people to do things. At some point, people, you have to take responsibility for your own actions. We are professionals. And so if there's something that's being asked of you and you don't think it's appropriate, whether it's, giving immunizations or delegating it to a technician, then, I think it's the pharmacist's responsibility to stand up and say no, along with the technician. And going to the being spread thin and being overworked, this is actually other states, other experiences. This was actually an opportunity to help that situation. Take the non-discretionary task out of immunizations and vaccine administration away from the pharmacist so that they aren't as stretched as thin. Just like, other tasks that the technicians are able to do. We still have clerks that can help us, take in prescriptions and, help us with the calls and all those types of things. So I think that this, part of this is also to kind of help the whole process. So that's why I'm in support of making a policy statement, getting a waiver in place. It'll actually give us a chance to see, in real life, how does it really, how does it work? We have a lot of information from other states that it actually works quite well. And we can see if there's any, unique caveats that we need to understand in California. So thank you, Greg, for letting me make my statement.
Thank you, Debbie. Now, Shirley, let's hear from you.
Sure. I'm very supportive of increasing access to healthcare, including access to the flu vaccine and the COVID-19 vaccine. But as long as it wouldn't cause too much delay in getting this policy statement finalized, I would love the opportunity to hear and give board members Butler and O an opportunity to propose a statement or an amendment to the existing statement to clarify that this is an optional, authorization and at the discretion of the pharmacist. And also, I'd love to have a bit more of an in-depth discussion about the health impact for approving authorization for all vaccines above and beyond the flu and COVID-19 vaccine.
Thank you.
Gray, I would like to make a statement before you go to the public opinion.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to make myself clear that I do support that we expand our profession, and but I would like to no mandatory and no retaliation for refusal, and provide sufficient staffing to do so. That's my statement.
Thank you.
Hey, Greg,
Okay.
can I ask a question to council?
Sure.
So in order to administer this vaccine, you have to have training to do that. Is that correct? You can't administer it without training.
That's correct.
And so an independent pharmacy who did not thought they would be overwhelmed and wasn't adequately prepared, they could simply just not train their pharmacists, correct?
Correct, and
Then they would not be required. Then they would not be required or forced to provide the vaccine, correct?
Correct, because currently the way the policy statement is, the task must be delegated by the pharmacist to the pharmacist tech.
So what I'm hearing, this policy as written today is basically an opt-in policy, because those independent pharmacies who did not feel comfortable simply just wouldn't train their farm techs. The farm techs wouldn't be required to give a vaccine because they would have their training, correct?
Correct. I think there's two elements to that. One, if the farm tech doesn't get the training, it can't be delegated to them. And even if a pharmacist tech did get the training, if the pharmacist did not feel comfortable delegating that task to the particular pharmacist tech, they don't have to do it.
So is there any penalty to the pharmacy for not training their staff, their farm tech?
Not that I can think offhand, but the pharmacist tech may be able to take the training independently. When we're talking about the retaliation and trying to prevent that against pharmacists or pharmacist techs, don't want to do this. It's really under California labor law and federal law. I don't think this board would have the power to change that. I think, as Debbie Veal was saying, I think there comes a certain point, sometimes you have to stand up and just say, I can't do this. But can we protect pharmacists from lawyers pressuring them to do it? I think they may feel that way anyway, but some will, some won't, and some, if they don't feel they have the right pharmacist tech, this type of training, don't have to delegate it to them.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing, this is basically an opt-in proposal, because the pharmacy would require or may not require that the farm tech take the training. The farm tech does not take the training, or if the pharmacist, that independent pharmacy, chose not to train their employees, they wouldn't be required to, or they wouldn't be able to administer the shot, correct?
Have the training under the proposals that they've talked about, they could not administer it. As I was saying, though, I don't know whether pharmacist techs can sign up for this training by themselves outside of their employer authorizing it. That I'm not sure of. But there's still two levels to it. One, the tech has to have the appropriate training. Second, it needs to be delegated by the supervising pharmacist.
Okay, so there's two steps of protection in the case if an independent pharmacy felt overwhelmed, they could, not do it by not providing training, and that supervising pharmacist could say no also, correct?
Correct. The task would have to be delegated by the supervising pharmacist to a tech that's got appropriate training.
All right, so thank you.
I have a question for council. So let's say that a pharmacy tech and a pharmacist who supervises that tech, that they want to be able to give a COVID vaccine, and they want to be able to give influenza, but they don't want to be forced to give the other types of vaccine. They would have to go through the training, so that would enable them to do everything. And the pharmacist, then it would fall on the pharmacist directly to say if they do or they don't want the tech to go beyond the COVID and influenza. And it could fall on the tech to say that they don't want to go beyond. Is that correct, Noreen?
I think that's correct for the supervising pharmacist. I didn't hear the last part of your question, President Lippy.
If the tech who has been trained does not want to do more than COVID and influenza, it's up to them to say it, I guess. Because at this point, they're already trained.
I don't know what the labor law consequences would be if they're trained and it's authorized and they choose not to do it. That's one thing I don't know off top of my head. We'd have to go through California labor law and possibly federal, but I think that always comes up if they don't want to do the other vaccines. That could be that the pharmacist or the employer wants them to do. Could they be disciplined for it or, terminated? That I'm not sure of.
Right.
There would definitely be pressure, I would think, as they've said, possibly to do it. But I think most pharmacists and pharmacies who have legal liability for the execution of these type of vaccines are probably not going to want to take on that risk if a pharmacist tech that doesn't feel comfortable doing it. Because ultimately you can talk about, I know with the license, the pharmacist is the one supervising, but if there's a problem, usually what will happen will be a lawsuit against the company,
Right.
possibly the other party. So I don't know. I understand the concern of some of the board members about the possibility of retaliation and putting undue pressure by different corporate entities on their employees. But in the final end, I think there is maybe some type of counterbalance to that, because if something's done badly and somebody's hurt, the people they're going to sue will be the corporate pharmacy,
Right.
along with everybody else.
Okay, thank you.
If I may
Does
say
anybody
something.
else have anything to say before I go to public comment?
Sorry, Greg. I have a lot to comment.
Go ahead.
Compare just to make all the things that was touched on. First of all, this is not about independent pharmacies. I'm not concerned about independent pharmacies. Independent pharmacies, I think, have been doing as good as they can. I am concerned about chain pharmacies. This is more of a chain pharmacies. I am already hearing that they're, I get it. We cannot be the police of how the businesses practices. But again, if they are being subtly, manipulatively, however way it is, kind of forcing people to do something when they don't feel comfortable, I am telling you, I wish it is the case that pharmacists has ability to stand up. I really do, but that's not real world, guys. That's not what's going on out there. So. And not only that, just to add on to it, the technicians being forced to do this or technicians being allowed to do this is not same as pharmacists back when pharmacists were being trained to do vaccination. It's not the same, because that's when pharmacists actually were putting on the licenses that they have on the risk. We are allowing technicians to give vaccination under pharmacist license. So that is not apples to apples. That is apples to oranges, different comparisons that we are not talking about here. And also, I mean, Eileen, you can please help us here, but as Shirley suggested, I just think that if it is possible, I would love to put an additional language that states any action taken by employer against a pharmacist who denies to perform these duties shall be protected, rebuttally presumed as retaliation. Some sort of language that make sure that this is not going to be forced. So it's even if that, let's hope that this is an opt-in policy, but again, we are allowing something. This is not opt-in. It's more of we're allowing someone to do something. And again, we have to look at what that could cause for all those businesses to make those decisions and how that actually could affect people's lives. So I just want to say that we need to figure out a way. We are here to protect the public, and we need to figure out a way when we let someone do something that we're not just letting someone do something without any restriction. So that's where I would like to say, and hopefully we can talk more about this instead of just coming hastily to come to a conclusion, and going forward with it.
Okay, thank you. Council, I
can agree with
as
it.
I understand it, Council, as I understand it, I mean, I don't believe we could put that kind of a protection in. I don't think it's within our authority, is it?
No, I don't think it is. You can try and put a statement in. I don't know what type of authority it would hold. Some of these questions are determined by reference to labor law here in California,
Right.
federal protection. So that's something I think is you can think about adding some language. I just don't think it would be legally effective. And we may hear some more in public comment. I'd like to hear if there's other people here from the chain pharmacies that can talk
Right.
about what their employer relationships are and how they deal with some of these tasks.
Okay, the other thing I want to mention is to everybody, after we hear public comment, if the feeling is that you want to go back to just influenza in addition to COVID, the way to get there, you would have to vote down the current motion and then replace it with another motion, unless you could get those who made the motion and second to amend it. So that's, just wanted to mention that. Anyway, let's go ahead and moderator, let's go ahead and open the lines for public comment.
President Lippy, this is Anne. I apologize for the interruption.
Oh.
I just wanted to, while public comment is getting queued up, I just wanted to point out some provisions in our law. It's section 1793.3, where it talks about, and this is, it's not an apples to apples, but I just wanted to highlight where we have some kind of potential law that it talks about a pharmacist who exercising his or her professional judgment pursuant to, another section, refuses to supervise the number, that there's like a process for that. And so there may be existing language in our law that could potentially be considered as maybe getting to some of the concerns. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not offering a recommendation or anything. I just wanted to let you know that there is provision that's in a different context, but might also get to some of the theme that I'm hearing from some of the members. Thank you for your time. Sorry about that.
Do you have the text to that? Could you read us a bit of it or not?
Sure. It's 1793.3 of our regulations, so Title 16, Ccr Section 1793.3. And the title of that section is Other Non-Licensed Pharmacy Personnel, right? So it's not the same as what we're discussing, but it says a pharmacist who, exercising his or her professional judgment pursuant to subdivision B, which is speaking to supervising non-licensed personnel, refuses to supervise the number of non-licensed personnel scheduled by the pharmacy, shall notify the pharmacist in charge in writing of his or her determination, specifying the circumstances of concern with respect to the pharmacy or the non-licensed personnel that have led to the determination within a reasonable period, but not to exceed 24 hours after posting the relevant schedule.
Okay, does it indicate what happens if they do that? I mean, or is there any enforcement to that?
So then it says no entity employing a pharmacist may discharge, discipline, or otherwise discriminate against any pharmacist in the terms and conditions of employment for exercising or attempting to exercise in good faith the right established pursuant to this section.
That's the important part. Okay.
And that's 1793.3D like dog. I apologize for the interruption.
No, thank you. So if they can do it for unlicensed, they could probably do it for licensed. Okay, thank you. Moderator, are we opening up for public comment?
This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to submit a request for public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Enter "I would like to make a comment" into the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. As a reminder, each commenter will have 2 minutes to present their comments. Our first comment today comes from Daniel Martinez. Daniel, your microphone is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. I want to echo a lot of the comments that were made. As I mentioned the last time we discussed this issue, CPHA has new policy to where we do support technicians, doing these kinds of things. But one of the things that we really want the board to take into consideration is the pharmacist, what happens to them, like the responsibility, because all of this eventually falls on the responsibility of the pharmacist. When we talk about expanding technicians' duties, whether you're in an independent setting, chain setting, or whatever setting, that responsibility, there needs to be a shift of responsibility if technicians were to do this, especially if we're talking about all vaccines and not just influenza. That is something that is paramount, and I echo Sung Oh's comments about, that's really where patient safety is at risk. If a pharmacist is either afraid, either because of retaliation of corporate or because there's too many things going on, or for whatever reason, that does come into play. We've seen that happen as well. And so I would ask this board to revert back to the original policy statement of just influenza. I think that's a good start and a good policy to go off of, and really think about perhaps adding some sort of explicit protections for the pharmacists that perhaps are not currently in law right now.
Thank you, Danny.
Our next comment comes from Lori Walmsley. Lori, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, President Lifney, members of the board. I've obviously heard a lot of opposing opinions today from the board members with regards to concerns with pharmacists' workload. I just wanted to point out to the board that at this point, we're not talking about new authority for pharmacists per se. This does not expand the scope of what pharmacists would be doing on their day-to-day basis. The authority for COVID vaccines being administered by pharmacists has already been determined by the legislature and goes into effect in January. What we're really discussing today is really for the pharmacist's ability to delegate part of this activity to trained and appropriately trained pharmacy technicians to help to support the workload of the pharmacist. Adopting this rule will not only support the pharmacists, but it will also help to support the public. You heard at the last board meeting the safety considerations from the other states, and that this has been proven that it's been done safely by technicians in other states. I truly believe that this will help to support pharmacists in the state to provide more vaccines and to help get the needed COVID vaccine out to the state of California, which ultimately helps to support the public health mission of the board and for the state of California. I really appreciate your consideration for this and look forward to continued discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, moderator, next. Hello? Did I lose my moderator?
This is Anne. It looks like the moderator line is muted. Perhaps the co-moderator could step.
Hi, this is the co-moderator. Let me try and connect with the moderator real quick.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do not have the ability to unmute mic. So let me see if I can connect with Shelley.
Oh, this is the
Okay.
moderator. I am back. Can everybody hear me?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, sorry, I
Move
lost
on to the
connectivity
next-
for a moment.
That's okay. Can we move on to the next commenter?
Yes, our next comment comes from Lauren Manning. Lauren, you are unmuted and you will have 2 minutes.
Okay. Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Manning, a licensed pharmacist currently employed with Walgreens and have been working in the community pharmacy setting now for 25 years. So as we consider the idea of expanding the pharmacy technician role here in California to include the added training and administration of vaccines, I feel that this could be a very beneficial change for those of us in community pharmacy and those patients we care for. I was a pharmacy manager in Ohio at the height of the H1N1 2009 pandemic, actively involved in the administration of vaccines to many patients. Patients' response was overwhelming, and although we had all licensed pharmacists trained and certified to vaccinate, we worked furiously to keep up with the demand. My technicians were able to assist with processing and paperwork, but not the physical administration of the vaccines to patients. So now here in 2020, with the COVID-19 pandemic in California, I feel we're expecting a patient response and need for vaccinations that can only best be described exponentially with the amount of patients who rely on us for their health care. We are their most trusted clinicians, usually whom they reach out to for their medication needs, even above their physicians. So to support or propose this idea of a waiver being granted to allow our licensed technicians to become trained to immunize under the supervision of us as pharmacists to help meet the increasing demand for vaccinations and patient safety would be very beneficial. This would allow the pharmacists, such as myself, more time to devote to our clinical role, providing consultations, ensuring patient adherence, and more positive healthcare outcomes. I feel that the expansion of the pharmacy technician role to include administration of vaccines will also be well received among the pharmacy community. My current staff was immediately extremely interested in the idea and the possible future role of their expansion to allow them to contribute to this current COVID-19 situation, making a difference going forward in a positive way for our patients. I appreciate everyone's time and thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Our next comment comes from Leanne Snyder. Leanne, your microphone is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Leanne Snyder. I have 20 years experience working as a community retail pharmacist, and I do believe that appropriately training specific pharmacy technicians to draw up and safely administer vaccines under the supervision of a pharmacist will lead to improved patient care. We know that if pharmacists spent more time working at the top end of their clinical training by providing patients with quality consultations and education, that patient safety and health outcomes ultimately improve. But most community pharmacists are overwhelmed by the increasing workflow and job demands. Tasks such as drawing up vaccines and injecting them are time-consuming activities that add strain to the pharmacist and the pharmacy workflow. These time constraints do not serve patients well, since they lead to increased medication errors and decrease the amount of time pharmacists can spend with patients, giving them the clinical attention they need and deserve. One way to mitigate this is to train technicians to draw up and inject vaccines. The pharmacist would still be responsible for the components of the vaccination process that require clinical judgment and primarily affect patient health and safety, such as patient screening, education, appropriate vaccination selection and storage, and providing emergency care if needed. The pharmacist would also perform the final product verification once the technician had drawn up and was ready to inject the vaccine. But it is the time-consuming, non-clinical act of drawing up and injecting the vaccine I am confident a trained technician could perform. It should also be noted it is already common practice for pharmacy technicians and other fields of pharmacy to draw
10
up
seconds.
medications into syringes. Lastly, The COVID-19 vaccine is on the verge of being released. How safely and effectively this can be done, administered to the public, will depend on crucial interventions such as allowing technicians to administer vaccinations.
Time has expired.
Thank you.
The next comment comes from R. Talley. Your microphone is unmuted and you will have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why it says R Talley. This is actually Paige Talley.
We know who you are.
Thank you. And California Council for the Advancement of Pharmacy. Since I only have 2 minutes and it seems to go by so fast, I will probably send a letter to you enumerating some of our concerns, because I do have anecdotal information on chain stores that my independent pharmacies have hired some of their pharmacists because some of the chain stores wanted the pharmacists to do vaccinations and the pharmacist didn't feel comfortable with it. So, you know, why would a tech necessarily? But I want to tell you, I agree with board members Butler and O, and I agree with Danny Martinez and CPHA, which is a surprise, right? On just doing the influenza at this point. But I want to ask a question of, I would like to understand how a pharmacist can provide consultation while giving direct oversight of a pharmacist technician when that technician is administering a vaccine. You know, in my experience, for example, if you're going to a drive-up window and getting your prescription filled, the pharmacist comes, he consults with you, he or she, and his or her back is turned to the technician who would be administering the vaccination. So how is that direct oversight? I don't know.
Okay. I think it goes to the definition of direct supervision. And you have a definition of direct supervision, I believe.
It's section 4023.5. And it says, for the purposes of this chapter, direct supervision and control means that a pharmacist is on the premises at all times and is fully aware of all activities performed by either a pharmacy technician or intern pharmacist. Right. So it doesn't mean they have their eyes on the person at all times.
Well, President Lippy,
Yes.
there are a couple of my members who have had orders of correction from board inspectors because they could not see their pharmacy tech filling, say, an automated drug delivery system in the pharmacy, or they could not see the IV room because the windows weren't big enough or wide enough, and they had to correct that.
That's interesting. I think we need to look into that.
So
I
would
agree.
recommend.
Thank you.
I would recommend that we not discuss anything site specific. I think sometimes what's represented in meetings, the board staff will take away that comment, but I would caution the board from engaging further in a discussion on an enforcement or investigation.
Well, it's a closed case. This was years ago. But at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that direct supervision by some inspectors means direct supervision, and you can see directly the individual, and that's my concern here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next request for comment comes from Kayla McFeely. Kayla, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Kayla McFeely, National Association of Chain Drug Stores. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. NACDS is very supportive of this concept for technicians to administer vaccines, including and beyond influenza, and I appreciate the board's consideration to move forward. I want to emphasize a number of points that were made today in support. Today, there's an urgent need to leverage all qualified immunizers amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and to help meet this public health demand, HHS released guidance on October 20th authorizing pharmacy technicians to administer recommended pediatric vaccines and COVID-19 vaccines, superseding state laws. But even outside the pandemic emergency, states are permanently adopting statutes and rules for technicians to administer immunizations, even beyond flu, as noted by others. There's a number of states with permanent authority, Washington, Utah, Idaho, Rhode Island, most recently Nevada. States are piloting this concept and looking to fold techs into CPAs to administer vaccines, and certain federal facilities allow this as well. So there's a lot of traction around the country to explore this topic and create permanent rules and changes. And I want to add too that the permanent expansion for technicians better supports pharmacies to deliver routine vaccines. It strengthens vaccine capacity for future health emergencies and pandemics. And research has indicated that techs can do this safely and that they want to do this. I also wanted to bring up an interview, research study conducted with supervising pharmacists in Idaho that states specifically that supervising pharmacists believe that having a technician capable of immunizing actually helps them to better prioritize their time, so they can spend more time on tasks that require their clinical judgment, and in turn elevating the role of both pharmacists and technicians to better serve the public. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kayla.
Our next request for comment comes from Jaskrin Graywall. And your microphone is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chair and board members. My name is Jazzy Graywall, and I'm here on behalf of UFCW Western States Council and our thousands of pharmacists and pharmacy technicians in the retail setting. As we shared at the last Board of Pharmacy meeting, UFCW is opposed to expanding the pharmacy technician scope of practice to include administering vaccines. We need to discuss the expansion of all vaccines in the licensing committee, similar to what we did with the flu vaccine. We have not had a chance to dive into the specifics for such a broad sweep of all vaccines. There is currently a surplus of pharmacists who are willing and able to perform this service at community pharmacies throughout the state that should be utilized first before expanding the pharmacy technician's scope of practice. Currently, there is no statute that allows pharmacy technicians to administer vaccines, and a statutory change will be required to do so. How can we waive a rule that does not exist? Just yesterday, our pharmacy technicians at a drug retail chain received verbal notice that when a COVID-19 vaccine becomes available, they will be responsible for administering such a vaccine. This announcement and move to change a pharmacy technician's scope of practice is premature, as we are just discussing this today. And any changes to a technician's duty in unionized shops must be communicated and negotiated through their collective bargaining agreements. Since California does not currently allow technicians to administer vaccines, we must first do an apples-to-apples comparison of training requirements and programs in the state before allowing this change. Additionally, pharmacists need strong anti-retaliation protections in the form of a rebuttable presumption to protect them from the corporate pressures within chain retail pharmacies. Anti-retaliation protections need to be written into any policy statement that moves forward. Without a statement, pharmacists will be left unprotected without these two actions. It's premature to move a policy statement forward for all vaccines. I know I'm out of time, but I have a pharmacy technician who forwarded me a statement. She was unable to attend today because she had work. If it's possible to read it to the board.
Go ahead.
Thank you. To whom it may concern, I'm a pharmacy technician and I work in a retail pharmacy. I do not feel comfortable sharing my personal information because I'm afraid of workplace retaliation. We have been informed from our company, pharmacy techs will be required to give out the COVID vaccine to the public as soon as it becomes available to the public. I am concerned because we have no prior experience or training on immunizations and did not learn this in pharmacy tech school, nor that technicians had to also provide vaccinations. In our company, vaccines are given by pharmacists who are doctors and intern pharmacists. Our huge concern is pharmacy techs having to do vaccines. And this story isn't one of the only ones of folks that are afraid to speak up because of retaliation. And so I think this goes to show that in the workplace, pharmacists and techs are also very scared. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next request for comment comes from Eric Robles. Eric, your microphone is unmuted and you will have 2 minutes.
Great. Good morning. Eric Robles with the United Nurses Associations of California, Union of Healthcare Professionals. We represent both pharmacists and nurses. Thank you for bringing this topic up today. Let me just echo some of, let me just say that I agree with many of the concerns that were put out today, this morning, so I won't repeat them. But first, I'm really concerned that this idea has gone from just a influenza vaccine to an expanded conversation. This is not something I expected today. And so I'm hoping that we can bring this item back to licensing so that it can really be vetted out the way it should be. There are many pharmacists at home right now, many pharmacists who have graduated from pharmacy school who need work, who need to get back, who need that opportunity to make a living. This will go against that opportunity. I would really like to underscore that there are patient safety concerns here, but I think one of the main items that I heard during this conversation all went regarding the impact on the labor workforce. Let me just say, we are concerned that an opt-in policy doesn't necessarily work like it sounds like it works. An opt-in policy may look great on paper, but when an employer puts in an opt-in policy, guess what happens when a new hire comes into the world of this possible employer? That opt-in policy becomes a factor in hiring a future employer. So if there's an opt-in policy and a candidate gets screened, you know what, that employer will say, you know, this individual is not likely to opt in, so we should not hire this individual. I hope you can understand that this happens in real life. There's so much more to discuss. I know it's a statutory change, but I do welcome the opportunity to continue this robust conversation so that we can really have a real, fair, and even conversation on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Our next request for comment comes from Rob Geddes. Rob, your microphone is unmuted and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time to comment. My name's Rob Geddes. I work for Albertson Safeway Pharmacies and just wanted to express my continued support. It has not wavered. We as a company have been allowing immunizations to be provided by technicians for 4 years now. A couple of points that I would like to be able to make at this point. I do feel like there's been some misperception of what a change from influenza to all vaccines really means. The influenza vaccine in general is an intramuscular vaccine. So when you're talking about additional training, there is no additional training once you've been trained to provide an injection by intramuscular route to apply that same technique to other vaccines. So as far as the additional training that is regarded with other vaccines, that would relate to the pharmacist's clinical judgment when determining if a vaccine is appropriate for a patient. That's not what's being discussed today. That will continue to stay in the hands of the pharmacist as we've spoken about previously. So just wanted to make sure that we can understand that the vaccines, the administration and the technique does not vary as long as the administration is the same from one vaccine to another. The other piece that I wanted to discuss, there's been some comments about pharmacists and technicians being forced into taking these actions and doing these steps by their employer. In the 4 years that Albertsons has participated in this task in states where it's allowed, we have never forced the technician to do so. We've done it on a voluntary basis, and we've always allowed the pharmacist to retain their delegation authority to decide when and where that technician will participate in this activity to make sure that all parties are comfortable with that being in place. And in the 4 years that we've done this, that's been very successful. It's been well received by our employees, and we plan to continue that same method as additional states have adopted this in the recent months. Appreciate the time that you've allowed for public comment, and we express our strong support of moving forward to expand this to include all vaccines, as it's been on the agenda for the last 2 weeks to discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Our next request for comment comes from Mark Johnston. Mark, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Mark Johnston, CVS Health.
During the promulgation of 1714.3, we heard of pharmacists who wanted relief from the duty of doing immunizations. And today we've heard certain board members ask for assistance also. CVS does participate in tech immunizations where allowed, and our studies show that each vaccination saves the pharmacist on average 3 minutes because it's clearly less time to supervise a technician than to do the function yourself. We also heard from board members today that want to provide sufficient staffing. I would argue that the way to provide sufficient staffing is to exempt this duty from ratio, increase the ratio, or allow unlicensed personnel to perform the very simple task of immunization. Childhood immunizations are allowed in California by HHS guidance, which preempts state law. Currently, technicians in California can immunize a child. One of the reasons HHS made this determination is that California's childhood immunization rate was down 40% at the beginning of the pandemic. I also want to remind everyone that the licensing committee has already discussed tech immunizations and did approve of tech immunizations in a draft bill. Granted, it had different parameters than what we're talking about today. I bring it up because one of the key components was that the board agreed to hold the technician responsible for their actions and not necessarily the supervising pharmacist. It would be an individual determination per occurrence. I just wanted to make that clear, as I don't believe it was clear to a gentleman who spoke earlier.
10 seconds.
APHA does support this, the Association of the Pharmacists, and it is a simple, repetitive task that I think can be addressed in regulation, not just statute.
Thank you, Mark.
Our next request for comment comes from Stephen Gray. Stephen Gray, open, and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, President Lippy, and thank you for the board. I'm Stephen Gray, speaking on behalf of the California Society of Health System Pharmacists. I'd like to start out by making sure that what we're talking about is a policy statement. We're not yet talking about either a statute or regulations that would be implemented or adopted to implement that statute. CSHP supports the policy statement as put forth by Maria Serpa and board member Veal. It is critical that Mark Johnston's statement that the public is in serious jeopardy of having lots of children, teenagers, and even adults hurt because they're not getting the non-flu, non-COVID vaccines that they should be getting at this time of year, whether that be measles, whether it be HPV for teenagers, or whether it be shingles vaccines for seniors that could end up in serious pain, but also make them go blind. I also want to point out that the law requires that the supervising pharmacist that is allowing technicians to administer vaccines under his or her supervision has to also be qualified, has to also have the training and education. So the employer cannot just say to any pharmacist, you have to allow this without making sure that that pharmacist, whether they be the PIC or an employee pharmacist, has to have received the proper training and education. As Executive Officer Ann Sodergren pointed out, regulation does already have language that is not directly on point, but could be a model. But also there is also a statute, 4115F3, that talks about protection of the pharmacist who does not feel that it is right to supervise a second pharmacist technician. It again is not directly on point, but I bring this up because there are already examples in California statutory and regulatory law that can be used as models. I think that you should go forward with a policy statement, but then before obviously that we make it permanent or consider making it permanent, go back to the licensing committee for discussion of protection language if that is still desired. But this is an urgent public health issue, and we urge the board to go forward with the motion and the policy statement to get us on the right track in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
And at this point, our last request for public comment comes from Jessica Langley. Jessica, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, and thank you, members of the board. I come to you in support of the proposed policy statement and am representing the Coalition for the Advancement of Pharmacy Technician Practice. You can check that out at farmtechcoalition.com, and I encourage you to do so because this coalition has a broad spectrum of partners that support these efforts of advancing the profession of pharmacy technicians, and there's been a lot of talk today about what pharmacy technicians want and how do they feel about having these additional duties. And I encourage you to take a look at the website where there is a petition that individual pharmacy technicians have signed and are able to have a voice in what happens in these next steps as boards such as this one discuss what happens in the future for their advancement and how it impacts their career and the opportunities they have to progress within their careers. So as a coalition, we obviously support pharmacy technician administered immunizations and encourage you to check out the individual names of technicians that also support the efforts of the coalition, including this one. Thank you.
I think.
President Lippy, at this time, we have no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay, before we go further, I've had a request for a 10-minute break, so let's go ahead and take the break and then come back. Moderator? Okay, Maria Serpa, you back?
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Albert Wong. Albert, are you back? We'll skip. Jake Patel. Jake, are you back?
I'm back. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Wise.
Here.
Thank you. Shirley Kim.
Here.
Thank you. Ricardo Sanchez.
Here.
Thank you. Sung Ho.
I'm back.
Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
I'm back.
Thank you. Debbie Veal. I know Debbie's back, so anyway. Ryan Brooks.
I'm here, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, I'll come back. Albert Wong, are you back yet? Oh, no, but I guess we're going to go ahead. Okay, so I would like to call on Eileen, counsel, because I know she would like to say something. Eileen.
President Lippy, I just wanted to specify, we heard some comments during the public comment section talking about how techs will be able to give COVID vaccines pursuant to federal law and a declaration by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. I just want to reiterate a part of the California Constitution, Article 3, Section 3.5, that states an administrative agency, which would include this board, has no power to declare a statute unenforceable or refuse to enforce a statute on the basis of it being unconstitutional unless an appellate court has made a determination that such statute is unconstitutional. So therefore, under California law, if a pharmacist tech was doing a vaccine that was not authorized under California law, then we would not be able to defer to any type of preemption or unconstitutional analysis unless it was decided by an appellate court. So I just wanted to specify that because somebody could have misinterpreted those comments to believe some of the waivers or the other actions being taken by the board are not necessary to protect pharmacists or pharmacist techs from engaging in this type of conduct or these type of activities. And also, of course, any type of declaration by the Federal Health and Human Services will go away after the pandemic ends, and what the board is discussing is a permanent change to expand the pharmacist tech's ability to administer vaccines. Thank you.
Thank you. But again, it's at this point, it's a policy statement. Okay.
President Lippy, this is Ann. Eileen, I would just like to clarify some of what you just said. And if I'm understanding correctly, in the Reader's Digest version, because of provisions in the California Constitution, there is not automatic preemption over state law, as some have maybe inferred during public comment. Is that correct?
The way I would phrase it, Ann, is this agency, this board cannot make that determination in the absence of an appellate decision by a court. In that case, if, for instance, your inspector saw pharmacist technicians giving a vaccine that was not authorized under California law, you could not agree not to enforce the current scope of practice based on any type of federal interpretation based on the declaration, unless an appellate court had issued an opinion with respect to that. Does that clarify the?
Well, but we can do a waiver, right?
Yes. Yes, President Lippy, we can do a waiver, and that's part of the reason I believe that some of the policy statements and what the board is trying to do is still important, just to give the pharmacist techs and the pharmacists, the coverage under California law to ensure they're not put between a rock and a hard place if they want to administer some of these vaccines. So it's giving them also the authority under California law to do that.
Correct. Okay.
And I would just, Greg, sorry, this is Ann, just quickly, just to clarify, the board cannot do a waiver. However, the board could leverage a policy statement to request a waiver from the DCA director.
Correct, from DCA, right.
At a DCA waiver.
Yeah, when I said we could do a waiver, I meant go to DCA to get one. Okay, or to request one. Okay, so here we are. We've had public comment, we've had member comment, we have a motion, and we have a second. So I guess at this point, it's time to vote on the motion. And Maria, could you repeat the motion so that everybody understands it again?
Oh, it's gotten very complicated.
I know.
Perhaps, rather than me restate it and probably doing it incorrectly, perhaps Noreen or Ann could state what they have written, and that would be a first place to start.
Okay, hi, this is Eileen. So what I was thinking is the policy statement in the board materials is the current one. So the motion would be to amend the existing policy statement to expand it to include vaccines that are able to be administered by a pharmacist in California currently, correct? And that's currently ACIP or the COVID vaccine that's FDA approved or authorized effective January 1, 2021.
Thank you. So that's the motion, is to take the statement as written in the agenda and expand it to include all vaccines that are authorized to be administered by pharmacists in California. And just as a comment, my understanding, Mr. President, should this motion be voted down, we could go back to the original policy statement. So is that correct? I just don't want to lose the whole policy statement.
No, the policy statement as already approved would stay. This is just a motion to amend the policy statement. If it goes down, then the policy statement that was already approved by the board still is valid.
Okay, so the current policy statement is only about influenza vaccine, and this has nothing to state about COVID.
Correct. That would stay. So the policy statement.
Okay, so that would be
adopted.
I apologize for the interruption. Moderator, if you could please promote Debbie Veal back to a panelist, please.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask.
She is back.
Okay, yeah, she had dropped off. I was going to ask you to do it and asked you first.
So did you hear our discussion over the last 2 or 3 minutes to continue with the motion since you're the second?
Yeah, Debbie, you heard everything, right?
I heard everything. I just kept texting people, please, please, please promote me. So I've heard it all.
Okay, but I have a question now for Eileen. You said the board already approved the policy statement, but not the one including influenza. Is that correct? Eileen?
I was trying to notice it should not be limited. No, I think the one that we already approved at the last meeting was for the influenza vaccine. So that was the policy statement. And you may want to weigh in here, but the policy statement that's in the board materials is the one that was adopted first, the narrow one for influenza vaccines. So that policy statement was already adopted. So this one, the motion that, as I understand it, is to amend the existing policy statement to include a wider range of vaccinations.
Anne, do you agree with that?
Yeah, this is Anne. That is consistent with my understanding. It's my understanding that the essence of the motion would be to expand the policy statement to include the vaccination, to include that a pharmacy technician could administer a vaccination similar to the authority of a pharmacist, but only if delegated by the pharmacist, the supervisor.
Right. Okay, good. Now that we understand it,
so
time to take a vote.
So this is Maria. That was my motion, and I vote yes.
I have a question. Am I understanding in this that there's some protection here for the pharmacists?
That would be in anything that's discussed in the licensing committee next. This is just the policy statement. This isn't the specifics of that.
Okay.
So.
But Greg, pharmacy regs that Ann cited did have that protection language. So wouldn't that apply? You know, I don't think we have to call it out. That would apply, right?
Well, but it wasn't for that was for unlicensed personnel.
But I thought the point was that it could apply to licensed personnel too.
Well, I think what she was saying was, since we already have the language in there for unlicensed, that, you know, there's some precedent for us to put it in for licensed. Anne, is that what you were saying or not?
Yes, and I think that Steve Gray, as part of his public comment, provided another provision in the statute that, again, establishes a similar type of authority. I do not believe that either one of them would apply to this specific policy statement, but it demonstrates that the board has recognized and taken such an approach in other areas.
Right.
And President Lippy, this is Eileen. Also, too, is we send the more permanent measure back to licensing committee. They can look at whether they want to do this via statutory change, where such language could be probably stronger because it would be adopted not solely by the board, or vis-a-vis a reg change. So those are the type of considerations that could go back to licensing committee as they go back to look at how to implement the permanent change if that's what the board adopts.
Yes, thank you.
And this is just to situate it so that we could possibly get a waiver so that we could possibly handle the flu and COVID situation, right? And then licensing is still going to look at it in a more global view for a more permanent solution, right?
Correct.
President Lippy, we didn't have board comment post public comment. I do have some questions.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
If I could just really get a clear breakdown on if the current motion passes, how the board would proceed. I understand this policy statement would then, in effect, request that technicians could administer vaccines, but then how would we then go back to the license committee, and where would we go from there? And then just my own thoughts, I do feel that it seems that this is rather aggressive to allow for all vaccines to go forward. And I think it probably, in my opinion, would be more prudent to dip our toe in the water, as it were, allowing for the flu vaccine and COVID-19 to be administered and see how that works, kind of as a pilot project.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Debbie or Jason, was there a question in there? The question was, what happens when it goes back to licensing? Is that correct?
Yes. What would happen and what would go back to licensing?
Okay, let's talk to Debbie, who's the chair of licensing.
Yeah, so Song, what would go back to licensing? This is
Actually, that's Jason.
I'm sorry, Jason, I apologize. Jason, this is just a policy statement so we can, our goal is to then get a waiver in place so that we can right now hopefully take care of flu and COVID. What goes back to licensing is a more permanent solution because the waiver is only as good as long as the waiver is good for. So, it's probably like, 90 days, whatever. What goes back to licensing is a more permanent solution, and at which time we would rediscuss everything here and decide if we want exactly what we want to be permanent. And that would probably include, including some of the language around pharmacists and technicians being able to notify their employer that they don't want to participate.
So a vote in support of the current motion would only allow for the administration of influenza and the COVID vaccine during the duration of the waiver, and not all vaccines?
No. So the current one, you're correct. The current one positions us so that the administration can consider whether to grant us a waiver. But you are correct. The motion is for all vaccines, so that would include not only influenza, but it would also include COVID and other vaccines.
Yeah. Just to clarify, if we do not,
we can't do the waiver though. We are not authorized to do the waiver. It would have to be from DCA.
Right. But just to clarify, the motion is truly for all vaccines that pharmacists are authorized for, because our current policy is only influenza and does not cover COVID at all. So if we vote down all vaccines, we go back to the original policy statement, which is just influenza and not COVID.
Correct. Okay, is everybody clear?
COVID's the key.
Okay, is everybody clear now?
Would we not have the ability to add COVID and have it influenza and COVID?
That would be a possibility, but I think you have a motion on the table unless Maria and Debbie wanted to withdraw it. So if you want to vote on the current motion, which is all vaccines, and see if there's support for that in the policy statement. If not, somebody can make another motion, maybe for a narrower one beyond flu and COVID. But I think with the motion on the table, unless Maria and Debbie want to withdraw it, should be voted on and then see where the support is and then go from there if it's voted down.
Yeah, this is Ryan. I'd like to vote on the current motion, but always up to the person who submitted it.
Yeah, this is Maria. I'd like to vote on the current motion, and then
we will.
If there's another amendment.
Okay, we are going to vote on the current motion right now. Okay, Maria, you already said you vote yes. Albert? Albert, are you unmuted?
Yes.
Your vote is yes? Okay. Jig?
Yes.
Jason?
I would support a motion, a narrow motion for COVID and influenza, so I am a no.
Okay, thank you. Shirley?
I echo Jason's comments for a narrower motion, and so my vote is also no.
Okay. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Song?
I do vote no.
Okay. Cheryl?
I vote no.
Okay, Debbie?
I vote yes.
Okay. Ryan?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, without my vote at this point,
Hold
we
on,
have,
Lippy. This is Albert. I would like
yeah.
to change mine to no.
You want to change to no, okay. Albert is a no. Okay, at this point, we have 4 no's, or wait, 5 no's, 5 no's, 5 yeses. Now it's up to me, right? I'm gonna go no because we have enough no's that concerns me. So it does not pass. Now we can go for the narrower one if somebody would like to state that. Do I hear a motion?
I would like to make the motion to support, if I could get council's help or the executive director's help, that text administered influenza and COVID-19 vaccines.
All right,
So I
so
believe
so
the
your motion
motion-
would be to amend the current policy statement the board has already adopted to include COVID vaccines, subject to the same conditions if delegated by a supervising pharmacist, correct?
Yeah, we are you saying we already have it, which I think we do?
Well, we already have the influenza, so the motion that we're talking about now is just to amend the existing policy statement to include COVID vaccines,
Right, okay.
correct?
Yeah, we want to include it, so that's it.
I'll second Jason's motion.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay. Now, do we have further discussion on this motion? Okay, let's open it up to public for further comment on this motion. Moderator?
This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Enter "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. We will pause for a moment to allow time for submission of requests. At this time, we received no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay. Time to vote on this motion. Maria?
Yes.
Thank you. Albert? Albert? You unmuted? Jig?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Shirley?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung?
No.
No, you don't want either, you don't want COVID or influenza?
Not as the statement that is drafted.
Cheryl?
I vote no.
Debbie?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So motion passes.
And I vote no.
Okay. Motion still passes. Thank you. All right. What time it is? 11. Okay. All right. Next is agenda item 4. Our next item is, as you've all been waiting for, Review and consideration of the draft supplemental sunset report. As we begin our discussion today, I would like to note that yesterday was the board's sunset review hearing. In response to the sunset hearing, the board will need to respond to several items included in the oversight background paper. The response to those items will be due 30 days from yesterday. We are hoping to schedule a board meeting to review and finalize our responses on either December 10th or 11th. To facilitate this portion of our discussion, I plan to call on each member individually and request your comments on the supplemental report. Staff will be taking notes. Following feedback from members, we will decide on the best way to proceed. So what I'm going to do, as I mentioned, I'm going to call on each person to tell me if there are any additions or maybe deletions regarding the supplemental report, or actually the entire report. So I will begin with Brian Brooks.
I have none.
Thank you. Debbie Veal. Debbie, are you back with us?
Yeah, sorry, I was just slow at unmuting.
Okay.
I only saw one minor thing, and that is, have we updated like some of the descriptions of the board members? This is like, I'm not even sure what's worth wasting time on, but I think there was something in mine specifically that I noticed was kind of outdated, and I wasn't sure if we had updated all those, because I thought at one time a request was sent to me and I had modified it. So I don't know if that's important or not, but just
well, I think it's important. So okay, updating of the information of members for those who have submitted update. Okay, is that it, Debbie? Or did you have something else?
that was it.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. The only issue I had was that page 60 that we just discussed. And I do appreciate the fact that at least the time that I was out on disability, it was mentioned that that was the only reason why I would have been missing a meeting. So other than that, I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
Okay, thank you.
I actually appreciate that part, yes.
Thank you. Tony?
I don't have any comments except that if there's any typos or any just a little mistake, is it something that we can fix?
Yes, and there are some that we are aware of that are going to be fixed.
Okay, then I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Ricardo? You unmuted?
Yes.
Do you have anything? No additionals?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Shirley?
Nothing to add other than echoing Debbie's comment about updating.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jason?
I have none, thank you.
Thank you. Maria?
I have a question, and it maybe just need to be pointed to the right location.
Yes.
But I'm looking at Appendix 9, which is the fee schedules and revenue for personal license types. And I don't see the pharmacist license type in this chart. Am I looking in the wrong place? Can someone help me?
Well, I thought the same thing, Maria. It's little further down that I thought the same exact thing. But if you go down a little bit further, it's there.
Under what?
Under renewals.
What page are you on? Because
It is page 105.
So that's renewal fees. So I just wanted to have thank you for pointing that out. I would just have a question then to staff, is that should that be put into the other table also, because I see where pharmacist licensure is there, and that seems to be kind of confusing with pharmacist license renewal. I'm confused as that, just to clarify that part. I won't take a lot of time here, but, you know, because I know that the pharmacist licensure that's on page 98 is that for the initial application license? Because the numbers are wrong if it's for renewal.
Okay, Anne, will you address that?
We'll do one final check of all of we're going to do a final check of all of the data throughout the report. Just time was a little short to do some of the additional validation I'd prefer, but we will do a final review and ensure that we have the fees appropriately in all of the different sections, because there's application and then broken down by the individuals, and then there's the delinquencies and the renewals and everything else. We'll do a double check and make sure that we have captured everything.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jig?
I just wanted to thank the staff and everybody that contributed and helped to put this together. So thank you. No other comments.
Thank you. Albert?
No addition.
Okay. And I don't have any either. So, move to public comment. Let's open the lines for public to.
Greg, while the lines are being open, so can you clarify what happens now? I think Ann sent out an email yesterday. Was there like some additional questions that had to be addressed? Is that what's happening between?
Absolutely, yeah. We testified yesterday to the legislature, and they have a number of issues that they want us to respond to. So we're setting up another meeting to do that.
Greg, would it be helpful if I provided just a little overview of where we are, because this is not a typical sunset because of the COVID. Would it be helpful?
Sure.
So as you recall, we did submit our sunset report December of last year. Our hearing had been scheduled for March and was subsequently canceled in response to COVID. So in the end of October, the board received a request to provide a supplemental report, and that report is due on December 1st. Where the timing gets a little bit weird is earlier this month, we received notification of our sunset hearing. So actually, our sunset hearing actually occurred before we had submitted our supplemental report. So what you're reviewing now is the supplemental report. Separate from that, in response to the sunset hearing itself, we have 30 days to respond to all of the issues that are raised in the background paper prepared by committee staff at the Capitol. So that is now the next step. The timing's a little awkward, but you know, we're rolling with it as the different requirements are laid out. So I would just like to say, if it's agreeable, sorry, President Lippy, you can't tell me to, well, you can't kick me under the table to get me to stop talking. I think that during the sunset hearing, I think during the sunset hearing yesterday, because of the timing of the supplemental report and the fact that it had not been submitted yet, I'm not quite sure that, I guess I just want to make sure that board members feel that we are adequately telling our story with respect to everything that the board has done with COVID-19. I think that there were maybe some concerns about, you know, maybe the board not taking action in other areas. And I think that we need to, you know, make sure that we're adequately telling our story. Our board has been more involved with COVID response than I think most of the boards and bureaus within DCA. And I think if you feel comfortable after you all complete your discussion, I do think that maybe we should emphasize that a little bit more either in the president's letter or provide some additional detail and context so that it's very clear exactly all of the good work that you all have been doing.
Thank you, Aaron.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Cheryl.
This is Cheryl. So because of the meeting that you guys had yesterday, you feel that it's necessary for us to have another meeting in spite of what we're seeing here, because and then my other question. Well, first let me just ask that question. So is there a reason why we would need to meet up again about sunset? I mean, I hear what Ann is saying, but is there some more details we can get as to why we would need to meet to discuss it?
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. I was kind of wondering the same thing.
So this is Ann. Sorry, Greg. I hope it's okay that I'm jumping
Go
in.
ahead. Go ahead.
So several of the issues that are raised in the background paper are policy related that it's appropriate for the full board to deliberate on. So for an example, one of the questions posed is the composition of the board currently appropriate, or should there be changes to the composition of the board? So staff is more than happy to offer recommendations in that regard, but I do believe that that is a policy issue that is best formally responded to by the board. And as such, Cheryl, that's why we're recommending another meeting. I apologize. When we received the background paper a couple of days ago, typically the response is due 30 days after a hearing, and the hearing, as I said earlier, was canceled in March. So the board has not considered some of these policy issues, and then additional ones have been raised in the supplemental. And it's under that, it's through that lens that we're recommending the board meeting to allow you all to, formally state your position on a number of these issues. I would say that based on the hearing yesterday, it's clear that the legislature, or at least the members of the Oversight Committee, would like the board to formally weigh in on several of these issues.
And I also have some, sorry, so all these issues that were raised, not raised actually, issues that are in the background paper, not all of them are going to be responded. Are we just taking the ones that they raised yesterday?
So part of the process, Song, is we need to respond to we need to formally respond to each of the issues that are raised in the background paper. So members asked about some of them, and as you heard, they asked about other things as well, right? It's part of their oversight role. It's now part of our process through the oversight review is to then formally respond to the items that were incorporated into that background paper. So yes, we do need to respond to all.
Okay.
They were very clear that they want to see responses to all.
Oh, yeah, I heard that too.
Okay. Okay. So
all right. So actually, yeah, I guess we need to open for public comment.
President Lippy, again, I apologize.
I know we have to do some, and I know that we also have to have a motion related to delegating the work. But anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say?
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think we have to do some public comment before that.
Mr. Lippy, President Lippy, yes. I don't think we do. I think we should do the motion first and then take public comment on everything, because if we go to public comment now, take the motion.
We'll have to go back. Okay.
So let's make a motion and take public comment on everything before we vote.
That's fine. I'll go along with it. Okay. Okay, so that being said, I'll now take a motion or entertain a motion that we designate or delegate one board member to work with staff to finalize the response, so that we have our report ready by December 1st. I would further suggest that one person be Debbie Veal based on her experience with Sunset in the past. But I am not making the motion. I'm asking for a motion.
Mr. President, I have a question, and Debbie also. I have a question for you. I know there are three of us. I think you, myself, and Mr. Lippy have reached our terms on this board. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, you and I are in our grace year. Debbie has not reached that point.
She hasn't. Okay, I was just worried about timing because it could be our last meeting. Who knows? So, all right, I'm good. Thanks for the clarification.
Sure. Thank you. Debbie, I must.
Clarification. Also, Albert, is he also, you, Albert, and Ryan are all in your grace year? Is that correct?
Correct.
So, Greg, if I may, does it have to be one person? It may be a good idea for one of, like, at least Debbie and whoever else that volunteers, it'd be Jake, Jason, me, to at least be part of it, if it's possible.
Well, keep in mind, you're going to be part of it when we have the meeting to discuss everything.
And I think if there's two of us, that was Song, right?
Yeah.
If there's two of us, then do we have to make it a public meeting? Is that why we usually go with one? I'm just asking.
I thought it was two or more. I thought it was more.
Well, see, what's going to happen is it's going to be Ann plus one.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I believe if there's more than one board member, but I will absolutely defer to Eileen on that. I believe if it's more than one board member that would be formally approving it, it would need to be done through a public meeting.
Yes, and so it's better and at this point, you're just talking about approving the supplemental report with correction of typographical errors and updating the member bios to the extent that it's necessary. The other questions raised in the materials will be handled by the board at the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay, then I'm totally comfortable. Yeah, then that's fine.
Thank you.
I'd like to go back to, like, for example, when page 60 for the COVID-19 related issues, how did that get in the report? Was that something that was decided by the EO and Debbie Veal to put that in this meeting, or was this could you tell me how did that end up in the Sunset Review?
Ann, you want to respond?
So, Cheryl, what you're looking at is a draft that was prepared by staff only, trying to reflect the board's actions and discussions that have occurred. And that's why it was being brought to the board for its review and consideration. So it's a draft work product from staff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. At the last meeting, we decided that there was a motion that I would work with staff, and I think we decided to instead hold this meeting and have the discussion we're having right now.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what I want, and that's why I asked that we did, that we had a meeting. But I was just wondering because I, again, was real confused when I saw this here, and I thought this was something that had gone to licensing. So I just wanted to kind of understand how that happened. So I understand.
Okay. So is somebody going to be making a motion? Okay. If not, I'll make.
I can make a motion, Greg. I'll make a motion to what you just stated about assigning Debbie and Ann to work on.
Thank you, Sung. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second that.
I'm sorry, who's the second?
Jig.
Jig, thank you, Jig. Okay, now we will go for, well, do we have any other comments before we go to public comment? No, okay. Let's go, moderator. Public comment.
This is the moderator. The Q&A panel is open. As a reminder, if you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment in the ask field and submit that to all panelists. At this time, we do have a request for comment from Eric Robles. Eric, your mic is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes.
Apologies, I don't have a comment. This was previous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then our next request is from Paige Talley. Paige, your mic is unmuted.
Thank you, moderator. I have a question on background and description of the board and regulated professions. It's page 6 of the attachments, or you might want to call it page 18, but it says 6
page 6 on the bottom, right?
Right, And under this block that says pharmacy, the second green box, I'm confused, and I guess I just need clarification because I thought all pharmacies except hospital pharmacies are licensed as community pharmacies. So under pharmacy, you have community, hospital, outpatient, and closed door. And what I'm getting to is long-term care are closed door, and they do not furnish or sell or dispense at retail to patients. So I'm confused.
Okay, unfortunately, my page 6 isn't the same as yours. Are you looking at the, you're looking at this supplemental draft, or are you looking at the original sunset?
I think the original sunset, because I'm looking at.
Okay, because what we're doing today is the draft.
Okay, so I can't address, is that in the draft? I mean, that needs to be clarified, I think.
Okay, Ann, can you address that? Ann?
It's a document of 327 pages that I'm looking at.
Yes, that was the board sunset report. That's already been submitted. Before the board today is the supplemental report. If you have a question about a specific element, you're welcome to email me directly.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Paige.
So, can I say something else or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was mentioned that the fabric of the board, the representation on it, is that in the other report? Can I comment on that? You know, like having a community pharmacist and or an independent pharmacist and a compounding pharmacist. I don't think that's required. Long-term care is, and I don't see someone who's long-term care on this board.
I don't think it's in the supplemental. So go ahead and address. Please send your comments or questions to Ann, and she'll respond to you.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Lippy, seeing no additional requests for comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay. Do we have any additional member comments before we vote on the motion? Okay, if not, I'll start with Maria.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Debbie?
Yes.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Yes.
Thank you. Sung?
Yes.
Thank you. Ricardo?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see. Shirley?
Yes.
Thank you. Jason?
Due to my employment with the legislature, I abstain.
Thank you. Oh, let's see. Sung? Sung?
He voted.
Voted already.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Alberts voted yes.
I screwed up on my list. Sorry. Cheryl, did you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Albert vote yes.
Thank you, Albert. Okay. So.
Ryan Brooks votes yes.
Thank you, Ryan.
Jig votes yes.
Thank you, Jake. Okay. Is there anybody I missed? Okay, good. I vote yes. Motion passes. Okay. I guess that's it for our meeting. Does any member have any comment other than in addition to whatever we've done? No. Okay, our next meeting is December 3rd. I hope you all have a safe Thanksgiving holiday, and our meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.